and welcome back to another episode of Unscripted and Unchoreographed. I'm your host, Neve, the actor, and I have my co-host, Sarah, the dancer. It's great to have you here, Masha. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, yeah, it's good to be here.
So I suppose to start it off, how did you get into the art?
So my family wasn't arty at all. I'm Irish. I'm from Cork. I used to live in Cork. They play good music. That definitely helped. Like the Eagles. That was good music. And I was born in the 80s. So that's kind of my only introduction to art besides school. And then school, I was definitely the natural artist. That was my game, not academic human being by nature. I remember my sister was dancing around. We had a really big kind of foyer type hallway, and it was basically, now looking back, perfect dance room because of wooden floors, and it was really spacious. So they used to do their dance routines there for their dancing. So she was probably about 12, and I used to be like sitting on the steps being like, I just want to be part of this. So that's definitely the dance world that kind of tapped into me. I had an amazing teacher. I can't remember her name, but she actually was doing somatic movement with us in primary school. I remember being like, this is great. Like, it just shows how much it affected me, because now I'm a somatic therapist. Somatic movement is a big part of my world, and it has been for such a long time. It blows my mind how people can affect you. As my secondary school, like, I would get an A in art and like a D in everything else. Art was always there.
Why do you think you got so into somatics?
So like, I'm an ADHD, dyslexic, neurodivergent person. I have something called exceptional dyslexia, which is why school was really hard. I remember being in her class. She was just really cool anyway. She was really open. And I just remember being like, I'm interested. Whereas in class, it was like, this is terrible. I have no interest. I was always doodling. I was always an artist. Yeah, I was just like, oh my God, I want to be fully attentive here. Whereas in the choir, I remember we had a terrible choir teacher, because I also am a singer, a vocalist, and all that jazz. And like the classic experience of the teacher being like, you be quiet, you're not sounding right. You know, it's like how many people have we heard saying that? I was like, I am never singing again, and took me till I was like in my 20s to be more publicly singing. So it's like, that was funny because that was an art thing. Music, it should be medicine, should be something like joy. It was totally torturous and terrible. And then I had this woman coming in that was doing somatic movement that none of us knew, none of our parents, we never seen on TV. It was like a kind of yogi, dancey, somatic-y thing. And I was like, I like this. And she was just so lovely. So yeah, it's just, I think with art, if it speaks to you. So it spoke to me.
I had a similar experience with my youth theatre, and I was like, what is this? What are we doing? And it's so important. And I've noticed in like rural areas in Ireland, there's nothing in that town for young people. It's a ghost town. How that affects the development of a child.
I have a son as well. He's 20. My youth was becoming a mom really quickly. I was always like a wild child, rebellion, and my parents were like, don't ever do circus, don't ever do horses, don't ever do art, they're all useless, and I did all them. But my son, when he was growing up, and I remember like I brought him to it was a drama classes, and like they were really good. He was really enjoying them. Like, not to knock them, and I obviously don't mention their names, but like it was just such a sad moment because he's also dyslexic, and they pulled me aside and they were like, look, he can't keep up with the reading, like the reading the scripts. They were like, he just can't keep up and he's lost. And he was probably like 10 or 11 at the time. It was something he loved, and now he just couldn't, there was no option. There was just nothing there. And then he was kind of growing out of wanting to start a new group. So we didn't go back to theatre. He's very dramatic and theatrical. It was the same thing like around communities, even in a place where there is a lot of access in some ways. Because I didn't know either. I could feel like he was like all into it, and then he became a bit resistant. And then it's like, okay, this is the thing that was flaring up. So it is sad. And I'm a mom that understood, and I was very open. But like, what about the parents that aren't open? And then like they force their kids into like, I don't like, you know, it's a whole traumatic thing. So like, yeah, our parents and our community really do have a big piece on that. And as an artist, it's shaped me like as well in a very negative way, that my parents are really don't get the world of art and they just see it as complete waste of time. So it's like, you know, and it's like, what are you doing? And if you're like, I'm doing a project, it's an eye roll, and they're like, you know, they just don't understand it. Like, you know, it's just like, and they don't want to support it because they don't get it. You know?
If you wouldn't mind talking about your experience of being a mum as an artist, like how was that for you?
I was a makeup artist. That was kind of my first profession as an artist. So that's a very different kind of thing. And then it weaved in and out of different areas. And then circus probably was my next more professional scope as an artist. And all the other stuff in between had been maybe hobby orientated. I would have loved to have gone to England and gone to college. That wasn't my game. So I had to go, how else do you get there? How else do I learn? And that meant either traveling to training at a higher cost than if you were funded through Susie or something. There was all these different avenues. It was fine in ways. I haven't really thought of that question. But I think just as a human being and as a mother, single mom, it was obviously really hard. You don't have the support. Other people in my age group, because I was a unique age group as well for having a child, would just presume you don't have a child and expecting more availability or less tiredness. There's just all little simple things there that actually over the years from talking with other moms has been always really interesting as an artist. Yeah, you're half a person plus half a person because you're a single mom person. So whatever that is you have less time. That's the end result. You have less time, you have less capacity. That's why, like, I returned to college then and did my visual arts degree in the last few years because my son was older.
Have you found in recent years there are more supports, or have you found not so much?
Not really. I didn't really think of that before, but you know how normally in an event you might see single mom's price. There would never be a single mom's prize for artist stuff. I just never really thought of it. They might have student on wage, but like you could be a single mom and still have a job, but you're still one person. People don't get the dynamic of responsibility. It's a totally overlooked thing. Like there's so much more going on in Dublin with learning. Like if I was in Dublin, how much more access I would have had to Dance Ireland, for example, so much more teachers. If you're a professional and you want to get more experience, it's better than nothing, but comparison to maybe other places. And that comes down to those things, as we know, funding. It just comes down to so many things. So I don't even know, because now we're in a whole other crisis. And I left my degree and I was like talking to a few people that were just like, oh, I'm thinking about joining this or whatever. I was like being really supportive of them, you know, yeah, you should join it, whatever. And I was like, anyone that does an arts degree now is a lunatic because like financially 99% of artists coming out ain't going to be increased. So like you better want to not be doing it for money. We're going into this really crucial time with money and everything is just a huge cost. So it's just tough. Like, and I know loads of other single moms and they have struggled and some have gotten to where they wanted to be as an artist. And the main thing is it takes longer, but you're still compromising something. I definitely compromised the time I spent with my son because I knew this time of window as a dancer, as a physical artist, your age matters. This is another thing. I was talking to one person and I remember they were talking with their age and we got into a deeper conversation about it. Like I'm 38, they're younger than me. And I remember their thing was like, don't tell anyone my age because it really affects me and my career. I know because I was older than her, right? I feel so sorry for all the dancers in the world right now. And it's not just dance, it's everything really, but we have to bring that forward. That's the academic problem. You only have a time span to be able to get to this. But this is where movement is changing a lot. It's starting to become more alive in a different way and art is changing. Everything's changing. Like everything's going really fast now and there's just new trends moving and it's kind of fascinating. And I remember dancing a certain way years ago and I only thought about it recently because I can see more stuff of people coming out and getting really famous for it. And I was like, oh my God, like I used to dance like that. And I remember people being like, you're so weird. And people that were way more qualified than me at the time, the message for me is come back to your own art form. I know we can strive after people in front of us, which is amazing, and get support, but I keep learning that like the intuitive art is really what we should be seeking, and that goes to the of the body, whether it's like acting or anything. You know, it's like why those actors so famous, it's because they're just like channeling from some place deep within.
If you could give advice to maybe younger artists listening, or advice to your younger self, what would that be?
What I said, and I feel because of my age, I think as a woman as well, it just changes. It's just a natural hormonal change. Your body starts changing, everything, your mind. It's like, how do I want to look after your energy resources, your muscle, everything just changes. So it's like when you're younger, you're able and have that capacity to be a little bit more daring. I know there's loads of people that could have and should have or whatever done stuff and they didn't because they weren't brave enough as well. Like, I'm also really grateful for what I've accomplished in my circumstances. I did that because I followed my thing. No one else was around me doing it. I'm doing this thing because it's interesting me. I'm going training with that teacher. And I realize now I have a lot of influence from teachers that are all passed on, which is pretty crazy. And I realized, wow, that was beneficial. So diversity, I think, is a really big one. Don't listen to your teachers. You take the information and you just be like, okay, yes and no. You have to digest it. You have to really go into yourself and digest it. And I was that person, though, that didn't always listen to my teachers and questioned everything. I'm not also the best person, because if you want to get a certain goal, which I think in a lot of times with goals, people destroy themselves mentally, physically, and you might get to the goal, but after the goal, you might have like some serious repercussions. And in the art world, that is very common. Like if someone has their funding deadline, like how many people do you hear people, they're like, I'm actually dying, and you're just like, okay, I don't think we should be doing this to ourselves all the time, but anyway, like how much are you killing yourselves? I don't know. I just feel like for me the art world is quite toxic, and I just don't want people to go through a lot of what I've gone through. Basically, like if it doesn't feel right, it's probably not right. I think that's the best thing to say.
Would you mind talking about your experience of going to college and studying visual arts? How was that? How was that journey?
I went back because I had done all the things, but I still was really struggling as an artist. I was still struggling of being a financially stable person. I was exhausted. I was burnt out. I was in a very lost stage. And then I actually went to one college and then I left. It was a really bad year. So then the next year I went to another college and I enjoyed that, but it wasn't in Cork. So I commuted. It was mental. Then we got COVID, and that was a dance college. So that just changed. And I kind of said, right, I will do this, the visual art thing, because I was already using sound, movement, performance art. Even in circus, I was very contemporary. So I kind of found, okay, this will suit me. It'll facilitate and help me get to where I want. And I'll have the piece of paper saying I have a degree and I'll get more funding. It was tough because it was during COVID, the first 2 years. So it was a mix of online. I was considering dropping out like on and off all the time. So that was me not listening to myself and listening to myself, because this is the thing, listen but don't listen. So you kind of go, okay, should I do this? Is this my own sabotager? You know, you're kind of going into all that and you're like, okay, just stay, you're halfway through. So then I went and I did that. I am happy I completed that and I have my degree now, but the last year was tough going. Like it was really tough. And I know it's tough for everyone, but being a mature student, like all my school stuff came up. This is where my ADHD diagnosis, my dyslexia, exceptional, actually came up through going back to college. It kind of made me understand why I was really struggling as well in that classroom environment. So it was good because I went through a lot of shit, which was great. It was tough because I was already in my own self quite established in what I wanted to do as an artist. And I had loads of my own creative force and ideas. And the problem was, before I went back, is that I just didn't have the capacity and the funding to make these things become alive. I was hoping that I would improve all these things. And then through the college, even though it's quite experimental, do all these things. And I was like, I don't want to do all these things, but I did them anyways, fine. I found I was like kind of cutting my own creativity off because I really felt like I want to do something else, and now I couldn't because my energy was all the way over here. There was personal inner conflict, no fault of the college. Then the last year, so much anxiety because I'm also a really, really high achiever. All the fears and the doubts and the way I work is very difficult for an academic to understand, because I'm like, this is how I'm doing something. And they're like, no, we don't know. And I'm like, but you know, and they're like, no, we don't know. And I'm like, but like, it's right here. Like, can't you see this? And they're like, no, we can't. And I'm like, how can you not see this? I'm actually really good at communication, but now this seems to be very not cool. It was interesting. I also had a really bad back injury. It became potentially that I wasn't going to finish, and I did. I don't even know how it really happened, to be honest. It's a bit mental. But lots of people also agreed with me. It was difficult. Very, very difficult. So I kind of took a pause after that. I was like, who am I? But that's very common as an artist when you come out of college.
Can I just say, though, congratulations for your degree, because as a neurodivergent person, to get through an academic setting is extremely hard, especially if you have multiple neurodivergencies.
There needs to be more support for neurodivergent people, specifically ADHD people, because it's not understood. It's not understood at all. I had loads of support from the people that did understand. My lecturers did not understand that enough. I had a really traumatic experience. Like, it's an ongoing process. And it was because I was not heard at times. That's me being on the edge saying that out loud. It's on the edge because of the nature of the art world. It's really hard, and nobody tells anyone it's that hard and that it can be that damaging. That's the scary part. I am a holistic person. I have so many tools in my toolbox. I am fine now, but I understand why people are traumatized for quite a long time. There's no space for them afterwards. It's like that was meant to be normal. Like for me, I think that's what's wrong. You come out of the system and then they're like, you're not part of our system. We can't support you anymore. I think after you finish a degree, you should have 6 months of a mental and emotional support available to you via those colleges so they understand the dynamic. But I find that really alarming that there isn't anything like that. These are young people coming out, like 22-year-olds.
You are a somatic therapist as well. Maybe you'd like to talk about that experience, that journey.
I've done a lot of Buto in my time, and it definitely influences my work. And Buto, it's a somatic experience in some ways. It's also very dark. It's very intense for people that don't understand it. You could just be standing in place, for example, or doing a very slow movement. There's just this eeriness, like what a somatic experience can be. Nothing's been said. Nothing's been done. It's kind of what art does in some ways. Like art makes something happen in our being, right? I trained as a cranial psychotherapist, and then I did a somatic therapy on top of that. That would lead people, the body leading out, our tissues hold so much trauma. While I'd be working with them, so many different things can happen. It's not a shaped experience, but they could say, yeah, there's something happening and it's something in the hip, and it's like, oh my God, I fell when I was younger, and that leads to something else. It's unraveling of the body. I suppose somatic experience or somatic movement or somatic therapy now has kind of become a buzzword in the last years. It's very hard for me to peel it way back, because for me, I'm like, God, it's such a soul experience. It's a physical, visceral experience. And then it can come down to like something so tiny, how you're breathing as well. So it's quite huge. For me, it's a very vast word just in itself. The therapy side of it is very much enveloped in my practice as a shamanic practice. And now I bring very much the witchy world and the herbalism world. And I do a workshop called Shamanic Somatic Movement. It's something like I created my own form, and it works really well. And it's a space that someone could come into it for an hour and 15 minutes, get a lot out of it and leave, but not need help support afterwards. That's a movement workshop. It's very open form. My guidance is there. So their action is up to them. So it's going back into the inner listening and the inner knowing of what they need. That's going to look different for everybody. Literally everybody, so that's it.
I have always wanted to do Buto. Have you done it in Ireland or where? Because I haven't found it.
I was doing tribal fusion belly dance. I ended up in a workshop with a woman. This is going back 10, 15 years ago. And she was dropped this word Buto in. She was like, it's very dark and grotesque. So I went researching and I found people online. I can't even remember back then who was my first person. But one of my teachers, which I can't even, Mizaki, one of my teachers, he was definitely someone I did in Ireland. Yeah, and that was kind of my seeding at that point. He was in France. He's after passing on now, passed on through COVID. And I trained with him. He came back to Ireland a few times. I went over to him in France. He was a very old school, one of the old school teachers, which Buto is, I'm like, ooh, what is Buto? So it's a Japanese art form. It didn't come from anything. They kind of created it. I can't remember the exact dates. Like the oldest teachers were still alive until only in the recent years, something like this, the creators. So don't quote me on any facts because they could be very wrong. But to give you, it's not ancient, right? But because the Japanese and the Asians in general have such an ancient culture, there's just so much aliveness. So for me, it feels really ancient because they just bring that presence. It's a very slow moving practice. They say it's dark for the reason that it has very not attractive. So tribal fusion would be like, belly dance, very feminine. It's like the opposite of that. It's like you don't look attractive. You make really uncomfortable, ugly spaces, which are amazing. And it's very much about the liminal space, and walking across a room is a very good way to give an example of Buto. Could take 25 minutes and that could be the performance, and that person walking across the room could be explaining that they are walking across an empty canyon on air, and that's what they're maybe experiencing, and you're just going to have to figure out whatever you're seeing or feeling. It's very different. I've had lots of different teachers over the years. Each teacher is different. It's expanded. It's become maybe a little bit more contemporary, but it's definitely not for everyone. It's not fast. It's just not the word you put with Buto. It's very slow. Also, it's experience. You have to experience it to really understand that. Yeah. I think performance art gives a lot of scope of option. Personally, I believe that most of artists are neurodivergent. I feel like everyone's somewhere on the spectrum. Like every human has some kind of sense, and it's just like how our brains work. We can't say everyone, but a lot is going on. And if people unmasked to that point of being able to express themselves through their own form, performance art is very like that. Theatre has a lot of it, but there's script and stage. You can do really anything and say this is performance art, and therefore it is. With Buto, it is definitely more popular with the performance art world. There would have been a lot of performance art people that would have done it over the years for sure in my community. Like, this is an art form, this is dedication. And they don't call it shamanic either, because shamanic stuff, they often work with the elements, and they are kind of shamanic. They're like, be air. And you hear this in contemporary dance, but like they all layer in, from what I've heard and seen, experience over the years. How do you express air? And how could you sound more airy? The expression is different. The textures are different. It's like the textures and the feelings and the senses. And it's the room. If the room has an intention, like we want to go slow, and the teacher is setting the tempo, that's how it is, right? So like if you go to a really high energy contemporary acrobatic workshop, everyone is going, and you might not really be naturally that formed, but by the end of it, you're like, whoa! And like your body's moving way different because we just get affected by each other. So it's the pace. So if your teacher is like, how painfully, because Buto is often about expression of pain and darkness and grief and death, very death orientated. That's why it's not for everyone, because people are like, I don't even want to look at death, and alone be it. It could be like, be a rotting pear for half an hour. And it always reminds me of the Joker in Batman and Heath Ledger, how he passed on. Like, he took on his role so much. And this is the reality of, if you're going to be death all day, every day in your practice, you'd want to be very much alive on the other side of the practice. And some people do, because they're like, I'm always depressed anyway. I'm just going to be the best Buto artist because I'm just so dark.
No, that's really interesting. This could be completely wrong, so please correct me. But it always looks to me, when I've seen it painted white, the very minimal clothes, bald heads, dark eyes, it's nearly like an unmasking or an unveiling.
It definitely is. You kind of have to not be yourself. You can't be like, hi, I'm matcha, because everyone's going to see matches in the room. I suppose that would never be an instruction, but actually it does make sense. You're practicing the art of being something that isn't you. And that comes back to mindfulness and meditation. It is very mindful and is very meditative. It is about the unveiling. So that's the old school Buto. You're covered in the white powder, the white paint. You're naked or somewhat near that. But that's totally changed now. Of course, there's someone that goes and starts training Buto today and they're like, that's what I'm going for. That's the look. I'm going for the style. I'm very like cultural appropriation vibe. Kind of covering myself in white paint and doing exactly that and doing Buto, which I can do quite well. Like I am very able to get into that work very well. And it's not about doing it well, but like I can carry the medicine of what it is. It's very hard to describe that, but I've had such amazing teachers. I feel like just putting on the costume and being like, now I'm doing some weird, ugly poses. You can just be a Buto artist tomorrow if you really wanted. I feel like for me, that was never my path because it wasn't authentic, basically, to me. So mine just looked different. And that's something I chose because it felt right. And then I've seen that that's been a choice from a lot of people over the years. But there's a lot of reasons why it makes sense to be unclothed and to be covered in the white. I've seen that with different performances. There's some really amazing teachers out there as well, or performers out there that aren't, and they're very costume oriented. Some of them are very character orientated. There's a lot of character building in Buto, so people might practice their character for years, and that's the performance that they bring in, and their characters change through. So it's kind of like theatre. It just doesn't look the same, but just depends, I think, on the person and their teachers. Because in the end of the day, as artists, we are of service. I know this is a bit out there, but like every artist knows, like, why do you get into art? It's okay, some people get into art because they want to be on the stage and they want to do their thing, but actually that comes from passion. They don't want to do it so they're just famous. They want to do it because that makes them feel amazing, and then they're famous. The feeling comes first and the action is a bonus. And some artists are like happy to stay at home and do their little pieces and no one ever sees them. That's perfect as well. But we do know from the art therapy world that art is healing. You know, people say, oh, do you ever get a creative block? And I'm like, I've never had a creative block in my life. I only have exhaustion, and then I'm not creative. Do you know what I mean? I don't believe people have creative blocks. I think it's trauma related, or they just don't have the energy or space to do the creation. It's that simple. I don't think creative blocks are there because there's something in the way. You need space and time. Like art is like space and time orientated. Like just dancing to a beat in the supermarket. You're like, that's because your body's like awake and it's like, oh yeah, I've got the grooves. But my body does not move like that when it's tired. And as a dancer, you're forcing past capacity. Like how many dancers do we know that like drink their coffees or their energy drinks before they go dancing? Dancing lifts me up. I'm so energized if I dance, or so energized if I sing. It should be that way. It shouldn't be the way that you have to create the energy. And this is going back to self-care, self-resource. So this is kind of the big passion place I'm in.
Do you think there's anything that the government can do to help artists more or better? It can be mental health, funding, facilities, rehearsal space, whatever.
It starts with kids. I've done a lot of work as a pediatric therapist, and I'm really passionate about mothers and how mothers are supported. I'm really interested in the worlds of Steiner and play spaces in nature and facilitating more natural forms of learning. If anything, that's the grassroots. To reflect on that, it's not just my idea. This is just proven, and there's so many phenomenal artists out in the world that have come through those systems of education that were like, this is all I know, is to express myself. I feel like that's one thing, and I think that would lead a better understanding of our culture as well, because it's just more connected to the land. Kids are so removed, or the parents as a general whole, but the new parents that are coming up don't know what a tree is called anymore, and like it's a tree but they don't know it's an oak tree. So there's creating spaces that's everywhere across the world. We're not the only people with problems, but I feel like if we could start supporting parents more, I definitely don't know the answer, but someone said before I came onto this call, we have a lot of problems in the world and I don't know how to fix them. Like, what are we to do? And what I wrote there was we have to do the best we can and keep doing what we know is authentically true to us. Like, whether it's your art, like your singing, or like staying with the things that bring joy and spreading it. So how can the government create spaces that are more joyful? Or people love cities, but like, how can we create more nature spaces? Nature, just nature alone, if they just improve the nature thing, grow more trees.
I think that's a perfect answer and a perfect way to end this. Thank you so much, Macha. It's been so amazing having you on, getting your insights, your advice, I feel so inspired right now. I'm like, I can go make art.